Oh, no, I want him on the stand. But you don't have to go through the questions about whether the testimony was prepared under his supervision, all that. We're going to skip that. Okay. Does everybody have their mics on? We are live on YouTube. Let's go on the record. Good morning, everyone. This is case number 9507Q. It is the matter of the continuing investigation of the electric fuel and power cost adjustment charges of Williamsport Municipal Electric Light Plant. My name is Kristin Lawrence. I am the public utility law judge handling this case. For those of you who've tuned in to see the PE rate case, that will begin immediately following this short hearing. Counsel, please identify yourself for the record, starting with the company.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Tom Rudebush of the law firm of Duncan Weinberg, Genzer, and Pembroke, here on behalf of the Williamsport Municipal Light Company, and in this Purchase Power Adjustment Clause hearing case. Thank you.
Good morning. OPC.
Good morning, Your Honor. Michael Sammartino, Assistant People's Counsel, on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel.
And staff.
Ruthie Herman on behalf of staff.
Okay, and Mr. Rudebush, I saw that you filed a couple days ago certificate of publication.
Yes, Your Honor, I have before me an exhibit I'd like to have marked as W1. It has been reviewed by counsel for other parties, and I'd like to admit it into evidence at this time, the proof of publication.
It's marked as Exhibit 1, and I assume there's no objection to the certificates of publication, Exhibit 1?
No objections, thank you.
No objection, Your Honor.
WMELP Exhibit 1 will be admitted into the record.
I'd also like to call Mr. Chris Sims to the stand and have marked as Exhibit W2 his testimony, which has been stipulated to.
So marked. Do you want me to swear him in, Doug? Raise your right hand. And speak into the microphone, please. You solemnly affirm under the penalties of perjury the statements made in this matter that they are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your full name.
Christopher Stephen Sims.
Spell your full name.
CHRISTOPHERSTEVENSIMMS.
Give me your business address, please.
It's 571st Street, Ocean City, Maryland, 21842.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Mr. Sims.
Morning.
Starting on page 2 of your direct testimony, you talk about how the power supply agreement with Energy Harbor is currently set to expire on May 31, 2024.
That's correct.
Okay. And you talk about the increase that they've quoted Williamsport.
That's correct.
Will Williamsport accept whatever price that Energy Harbor gives them, or do they plan to shop around with other suppliers?
They have released an RFP, and so they are getting competitive bids. And at this time, we're still reviewing the results of those proposals.
Did you review Mr. Mosier's testimony in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you have any corrections to your testimony at the bottom of page 2?
No, I do not.
Okay. You compared the increase in Williamsport's rates to the residential SOS rate of Potomac Edison, is that correct?
That's correct.
You have that the PE's SOS rate will increase from 0.06318 per kilowatt hour on May 31, 2023 to 0.08826 per kilowatt hour starting October 1, 2023?
That's correct.
Those aren't the numbers that I found when I looked up Potomac Edison's SOS rates?
Yeah, so currently the rate is, I believe, 0.85 something. That's just for the summer. So the rate that I quoted is the one that was approved to begin October 1st, 2023. So they already had a pretty significant increase.
From when?
So effectively, from the end of May, it was the well, okay, yeah. So at the end of May, it was the 0.06318, and so on June 1st of this year, it went up to, I believe it's 0.085. I forget the rest of the digits, but I didn't include that one since that rate's already going to be obsolete by the time we get to the end of the power supply agreement that Williamsport has.
Okay, but you have that, starting October 1, it's going to be 0.08826. I have that starting October 1, it's going to be 0.09222.
So I believe Potomac Edison has, well, I just went off based on the most recent tariff that was filed from them. So I don't have the exact mail log number or case number, but the marked up tariff showed the rate is going to be 0.8826. Starting on October 1st. So that's I just got it from basically the Maryland Public Service Commission website from the most recent filing from them.
In the end, you conclude that overall, Williamsport's total power supply costs would still remain approximately 6% less than Potomac Edison's standard offer service rate for a residential customer. Have you in the past, or has Williamsport historically compared its rates to Potomac Edison's?
I don't believe we've done it in this particular case. I think the reason for that is because we've always extended our power supply agreement, and so we've had known exactly what the price was effectively going to be for the entire PPA period, and so there was no reason to effectively justify or support the rate that we were utilizing because we had an agreement in place. This is the first time since I've been doing it since 2006 that we do not know with 100% certainty exactly what the power supply cost rate will be for those 2 months at the end of the PPA term.
So you don't know in prior years the difference between Williamsport's rates and Potomac Edison's?
No, I don't believe I have a record of that.
And then on page 3, starting at line 4, you testify that the impact only from the increase in power supply costs results in an increase in the PCA of 0.00606 per kilowatt hour, which represents a $6.06 or 7.7% increase to a residential customer's total monthly electric bill that uses 1,000 kilowatt hours of energy. That's because it's only for 3 months, correct?
Essentially, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then about the middle of the page, you start discussing an adjustment you made to the PCA calculation based on line losses. And further down, you talk about how this was done in 9507K. So I looked up 9507K in your testimony in that case, and made a lot of sense in that case why the adjustment was made, because the company read the meters mid-April and was comparing meter readings halfway through a month versus a full month of supply. So it made sense that there appeared to be line losses when there weren't. In this case, you haven't explained the adjustment.
Oh, they haven't changed the time frame and when they read their meters, so effectively the same thing applies. Depending on the temperature for the first half of the month before the meters are read versus that's the retail meters are read on the 15th or so in the middle of the month, but the wholesale meter is read on a calendar month basis. And so, yeah, the difference in weather for those 2 weeks effectively at the end of the test period are the ones that would cause that differentiation in consumption.
That's what caused it this year?
Yeah, there's still that same disconnect between when the retail meters are read and when the wholesale meters are read. So there's not an exact one-for-one matchup in terms of when the when those two loads are calculated.
But in this case, the line losses you're testifying are temporarily low.
Sorry. I mean, it's just in the opposite direction. So instead of having, yeah, you're right. In that sense, it is the reverse of what we did last time.
I guess my point in bringing up 9507K was because I could see why you had the line losses artificially high, because you were comparing a full month of purchase to only a half month of sale. But in this case, you're adding 175,000 kilowatt hours to the forecast of the purchase for June 2023, and I don't know what happened.
So we are effectively doing the same adjustment. In both cases, both this case and the previous case, there are similar number of days in each test period. So both the retail sales has 365 calendar days of sales, and the wholesale purchases also has 365 calendar days worth of purchases. But what the problem is that they're not the exact same 365 days, where the wholesale meter is exactly on a calendar month basis. So if for the month of May, for instance, the wholesale load is based on May 1st through May 31st, where the retail sales would be based on April 15th to May 15th. So that's what I'm saying. They don't have the exact same one-for-one. They're not the exact same days on the retail side as they are on the wholesale side. And so the problem is that if you have, in this case, when you have low wholesale purchases because of lower weather for the end of May, those 15 days from May 15th to May 31st, if it's much milder weather, then what the so you got wholesale purchases for 15 days that aren't in the retail sales side.
But aren't you estimating based on June 2022? Because in K, you said, and I can pull up your testimony, you were comparing.
Sorry, I meant May 2023. Sorry, but that's the reason that we are adding it to June 2022's total, is because effectively we're only trying to make the total line losses equal to the average of what it's been over the last 4 years. And so
I understand what you're trying to do. What I don't understand is why you're adding to your purchase, because is it you think that in June 2023 you purchased a lot more than you did in June 2022 because of the heat?
I mean, we could have reduced the retail sales and effectively accomplished the same thing. If I could have left the wholesale purchases the way they are, and we could reduce the retail sales. It's 6 one, half dozen the other at that point. It's just easier to add it to wholesale purchases because you're not introducing load factor issues when you're talking about revenues for the town in terms of retail sales.
Do you know why that historically in case K, the line losses were at 5% historically, and now they're down to 4%?
Oh yeah, that's because they have been swapping out the old like halogen street lights and things of that nature. So when there's been much better improvements in terms of the efficiency of a lot of the services that don't actually get charged for. So the street lights in particular is 90% of what the reduction has come from. But they also, within this last couple-year time period, increased their base voltage from 4,000 kV up to 12,000 kV, so that has some benefits as well.
Do you you plan to report in to staff on the results of the RFP?
The staff will, this process is basically hand in hand with Thurmont and Hagerstown, because they all three of them put out like a joint RFP. And so, yeah, the results of that will be known probably by the time their next PPA hearing comes around, which will be March of next year. So I could certainly report on Williamsport at that time if necessary. Otherwise, I was just going to provide it with the next hearing.
Does anyone else have any questions for this witness based on my questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And if I didn't already say so, Williamsport 2 is entered into the record.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We'd like to call Lucy Shea.
I don't have any questions for Ms. Shea, so if you don't need to actually call her. Ms. Shea, I don't have any questions for you. Thank you, though.
We'd like to ask that her testimony be moved into evidence as Staff Exhibit 1.
Is that Exhibit 1, Staff 1?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Ms. Shea's testimony, Staff Exhibit 1, is entered into the record.
We'd like to move into the record Staff Exhibit 2, Kevin Mosier's
Is
testimony.
Mr. Mosier here? Yes. Could we speak with Mr. Mosier, please? Mr. Mosier, could you take the stand? His testimony will be marked as Staff Exhibit 2.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly affirm that the penalties of perjury the statements made in this matter today are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your full name.
Kevin Mosier. Kevin Mosier,
Give me your business address.
6 St. Paul Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. Mosier.
Good morning, Mr.
Morning.
Mosier. In looking at your direct testimony starting on page 2, starting at line 5, you state that Williamsport is in the same PGM zone as Potomac Edison, and as such does not face the same transmission constraints as do many of Maryland's other utilities. Is your point there that both Williamsport and Potomac Edison should experience lower rates than, say, BGE and PEPCO?
Yes, essentially I just wanted to give a reason for why I was comparing it to PEPCO and not the other 3 IOUs.
Okay. Did you listen to Mr. Sims's testimony?
Yes.
And can you clear up the difference in rates between his testimony and yours?
I believe the difference is he took the tariff rate, whereas I took the price to compare off of our choice website. And I've never been involved in setting that rate, but there's a couple of minor, I'm not sure if it's transmission or like administrative cost that are not included, or that are not in the tariff that are in the price to compare, or vice versa. I thought about taking just the tariff price, but at the end of the day, I just relied on the rate that was actually on our website.
Okay, because as I discussed with him, he concluded that the rates for Potomac Edison would be 6% higher than Williamsport, and you concluded they would be 10.6% higher than Williamsport.
Yeah, and again, there's been a long-running discrepancy. Discrepancy is not the right word, but the price to compare, unlike, for instance, your bill versus the actual tariff rate, there's always a slight discrepancy. And again, I've spoken to people about electricity about this. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's always some small factor that makes those two different.
And do you have any information about the historical comparison between the two companies?
Not a great deal, but the few times in the past I have looked at it, I believe Williamsport has always been a little bit lower than Potomac Edison. At some point, I think I asked someone about, it was either Williamsport or Hagerstown, because again, there's always been this, they're lower than PE, and again, PE, has a competitive price bid. So at some point I'd ask one of the parties, and again, this might have been Hagerstown, I'm not sure if it was Hagerstown or Williamsport, but someone had explained that one of those two towns had, and I assume this is also the case, if that was Hagerstown for Williamsport, has a really good load profile. So in addition to being in a lower in an area with less transmission constraints, I believe Williamsport may just have a good overall load profile as compared to Potomac Edison.
Does anyone have any questions for this witness based on my questions?
No questions, Your Honor.
We'd just like to ask that his testimony be moved into evidence.
Staff Exhibit 2 is entered into the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else we need to do today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, thank you.
everyone.
No, Your Honor.
We're adjourned. You can go off
Thank
the
you.
record.